First of all, let me just welcome you all to our event, your event, their event. Even those who are not here at the moment, we just want to take this as an event where we welcome everybody, and this is the start of something big for every African leader who is here representing whichever community. My name is Ketina Chivasa. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, but I'm here in New Zealand, and most people know me as Advocate Ketina Chivasa. I'm here to represent the African communities in New Zealand, not just in Auckland. I'm here to advocate for the 54 nations that represent Africa, which is one continent with over 2,000 languages. That's what I'm advocating for the truth, for the voiceless, and also for people to actually know some of the things that they have no knowledge of. The Ministry of Ethnic Affairs, they are the main sponsors alongside New Zealand Infection Prevention and Control. The Ministry for Ethnic Affairs, their offices are closed. They just received the message that they won't be open. So we will get a virtual message from them. But on their behalf, I could ask maybe Ben to say something when it comes for their turn to speak, because it's New Zealand Ethnic Affairs Ministry and NZPABC, the Infection Prevention and Control Consultancy Company, who are partnering together to sponsor such events. So we just want to say thank you to them. We are also here for the launch of the Pan-African Broadcasting Corporation, which is going to be one of our main media works here in New Zealand for Africans, not just for Africans, but actually for any ethnic groups, including others as well. And the reason why, I'm not giving a speech yet, the reason why you keep finding us ticking other on our forms is because, just like now, we're still waiting for others to come. You see what I mean? So we are going to talk about that as well. We also have Advocate Ketina Chivasa, and my name is Ketina Chivasa, and I am here as your MC, but I'm also a part of the leaders from the ethnic community organizations representing the Africans in New Zealand. I'm based here in New Zealand, in Auckland. We've got Ben Harris here, who is my business partner and the lead director for the NZPABC, New Zealand Infection Prevention and Control Consultancy, as well as one of the board members for the Pan-African Broadcasting Corporation. And I think it's such a blessing to have a person of a different ethnicity coming to collaborate and to work with us and to lead some of our African organizations as well. So Ben, thank you so much.
A few years ago, I was talking at a conference on infection control, infection prevention and control, and there was a member of the audience who happened to be African, who happened to be called Ketina Chivasa. And she asked a whole lot of questions, and I thought I could work with this person and because she's asking really thoughtful, incisive questions. So we set up a company, and because, or through that, I started having more and more contact with the African community, about which, in practice, I knew very, very little. And so I was able to see the challenges she had and how, in my position, many things I could help her a lot with interfacing with the New Zealand community or different sectors of it within health or out of, to make a pathway through for her much, much better. So I'm delighted to be here to support Ketina. Of course, I'm not African, you may tell, but in the last few years since knowing Ketina, I've learnt far, far, far more than I ever knew before about Africa, and I'm fascinated actually by its I didn't know there were 54 countries, and I didn't know there's 1.2 billion people there, and I did not know there was over 2,000 languages in Africa, which in itself is recognition of just how long all those different cultures currently put into 54 countries, but over 2,000 languages just establishes how very, very old and rich those cultures are throughout Africa. And when people come to New Zealand, as my forebears did too, of course, when we come to New Zealand, we have to learn how do we maximise all the richness of all those different cultures and minimise, other than sports fields and such like, or dancing competitions and such like, how to minimise any of the ones, the past things which were not so good. And we all aim to do that, I hope.
I also would like to be looking at like Africans actually participating more in politics. You know what I mean? In issues that matter in New Zealand, because you are part of what is happening here. Have a voice, listen and hear what is going on. How can we do that? An example of what happened, what has been happening in the past events where we invite our ministers and members of parliament. Let's listen and ask questions. There are people too. They are because of us. Ubuntu. You know what I mean?
I'm a very, very great believer that in everything that we do, we should be focusing on the strengths and the talents and the attributes of our people. Yes, of course, every community has challenges and problems to work through. But if you start off with the negative, that's not very good to be involved with. If you start off with the positive, the talents and the contributions, the connections, the abilities, the visions that people have, that's the way that you make it through. And that's the way you make things better. And I really admire the way in which you are trying to reach out and build those bonds in a Pan-African way, in a way that acknowledges the enormous diversity and differences across our African communities, but also tries to find ways to build unity as much as possible. Of course, we have the ongoing challenge of COVID, and I just really want to take my hats off to all of our community leaders who have stood up across our African and broader migrant communities to help people get through, to work on that challenge of getting vaccination out as widely as possible across all of our communities. And that's taken work, it's taken empathy, it's taken a lot of conversations with people to deal with really reasonable concerns and worries that people might have had. But you guys have just done great. And time again, I've seen our African community leaders standing up and helping to keep people safe. And that is going to be more important than ever over the next few months. Because as Omicron comes into our community, the way to keep people as safe as possible is to make sure they're fully vaccinated and boosted. It's the folks who are not fully vaccinated and boosted that run the risk of getting very sick. But if you have that booster in place, the chances are that if you get it, if your kids get it, if your parents get it, it will be a much milder variant and you'll be okay. So let's continue working together on that critical work of keeping all of our whānau, all of our communities safe. There's a second very important and very specific opportunity that I think is really good to think about this year. And it's this man that we have in our room with us, it's Red, who's here. Red is doing something quite historic this year. He is standing for election to our council here in Auckland. And if he is successful with that, and he has all of the abilities to do that, he will be the first voice for African communities and migrant communities on that council running our city.
Kia ora, mbolo, mbote, salam, assalamu alaikum, bonjour. My name is Red. I am originally from the Congo and I live here in Auckland, New Zealand. My home is Palmerston North, and I lead the community, African community here in Auckland, Central Auckland. So in the area of Mount Roscoe, Mount Albert, Miranda, so central area. I'd just like to announce to the African community in New Zealand and worldwide, wherever you are, that I put myself forward as a candidate to be selected for City Vision, and by the grace of God, I was selected as a City Vision candidate to run for the local election as a councillor for the Albert Eden and Puketapapa ward. So this is a great news not only for me or for the African community here, but for all Africans in New Zealand. This is great. This is not for me. I'm not doing it for myself, but for us and the future generation to come, for the young kids that you saw here playing basketball, to know that, hey, we are visible, we are here, we can not only get into positions of leadership, to have a leadership mindset, and this is for all. So I'm inviting you all, please come and join this campaign, come and let's help build this movement. Join this movement. I'd love to hear your ideas, because there's an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child. So through that same analogy, it takes a village to build a successful campaign. And with you, it's going to be possible. By myself, I can't. But we are a community, and we are a strong community. We want to build a successful, strong community in New Zealand that's socially and politically and economically integrated in New Zealand society. So I'm welcoming you. Please, I'm inviting you. Please come and join me in this journey.
Redland is based here in Auckland, and he is part of the AAF. If I have to say what AAF stands for.
Aotearoa Africa Foundation.
Aotearoa African Foundation, and they are based here in New Zealand.
Aotearoa Africa Foundation is an organization which I am the president. And Aotearoa Africa Foundation is an organization that advocates for the well-being of Africans in New Zealand. So New Zealand is African descent. So what we do, we're in the area of advocacy. We advocate for community members who have issues, language barrier, and if they need assistance, somebody to talk on their behalf, especially from an organizational point of view, we do that. We walk with them into organization. For example, if they have an appointment with Working Income, Orangata Mariki, Kainga Ora, we go with them and we speak on their behalf as well. Our objective is to help African communities in New Zealand integrate socially, economically, as well as politically as well. So we also do create programs, educational programs, identifying the barriers the African communities in New Zealand are facing, like with education. So we have educational programs, after-school programs, and we also adult education programs in terms of like English, helping parents and mothers, get well with the language so they can be able to help their kids at home. We do encourage African arts and African culture as well. And so we take language, dance, music, and other form of creative African arts.
Hi, my name is Titina Chabasa. I was born in Zimbabwe and I currently live in New Zealand.
Hi, my name is Tasha Mashapaidzi and I was born in Zimbabwe and I currently live in New Zealand.
Being a Zimbabwean in a New Zealand school, it feels pretty inclusive. Sometimes you have like a few Zimbabweans there, but yeah, normally for a few years it's just by yourself and you kind of just have to like figure it out yourself. It takes a very long time to figure out your identity as well, especially as an African. That was a struggle because it's just like fitting in as well, especially as a woman and a girl in an all-girls school. You just kind of like, it's very hard to get lost in like friendships and just finding yourself as well as just an African.
I have my own children as well. When they started school, they started in early childhood in New Zealand. And one of my daughter, because they were quiet, they used to come home with scratching their faces. I had to move my kids to a different center where they were very acceptable because the teacher was promoting really integration. They have an African baby doll in the center. The kids already know about the black African children in early childhood for my children. And then they never had problem. That's where they went to the child care center. And then my son, he excelled in that school. And then become academic honor. And now he's finishing high school. I'm really thankful for that school. And then now he's applied for scholarship. He got a scholarship for Otago University. Now he's going to study Otago University. I say to them, you have to be proud to be black because for me, black is beautiful. You look beautiful. You are beautiful children. People see you are black and you are beautiful. And then I say, you need to be happy because you are loving. You are a lovely person. You love people. That's what black stands for. And you are amazing because you bring your culture here. You dance to school. That is being amazing. That's what black stands for. And you are caring. You care for people and then you are kind. That's not why they call it black. They say, I'm beautiful, I'm a black, I'm loving. And that's the way I taught my kids.
What are the restrictions for when the red light comes, even though we're in red light, but what are the restrictions?
We know that we're going to have COVID with us for quite a long time. And we can't keep everything closed. So schools will generally carry on at red level. There might be some very particular situations. If there was a big flare-up of infection at a particular school, we might say, okay, for a week we might close that school down by itself while we get on top of it. But we're very unlikely to close all schools down. So school will probably continue, but we'll do some of those extra things to help keep you safe. We now obviously have vaccination for people of nearly all ages, including young people and school students. And so in some of our schools, we will be setting up vaccination drives to help get our young people vaccinated. You will have also seen that as part of our masking approach, we're saying that everyone in schools from year 4 upwards needs to wear a mask at school. And so that will help to keep people safer. We're also going to invest in these machines, you probably know about it more than me, Ben, called air purifiers. And they will mean that we get the air, COVID carries if the air is very still and if people are breathing in and out the same air. So we want to get good ventilation in our classrooms. In summertime, some learning can happen outside, we can open the windows, but we're also going to be investing in technology, those air purifiers, to minimise the risk at school as well. So school will carry on, but a lot of extra things to make it as safe as possible.
I'm a medical microbiology scientist, which I've worked in for over 40 years, mainly in hospitals in New Zealand and in the United Kingdom. I was born in New Zealand, and then I've worked in private hospitals also and the community GP practices, and I'm also an honorary lecturer for the University of Otago. With COVID, the vaccine is very good, but it is not ideal. Very few vaccines are. But the 2 jabs of the Pfizer vaccine, they reduce our chances of getting seriously ill or hospitalised by 80%. That's around 80 to 90%. That's 80 to 90 out of 100 people that would have gone to hospital no longer go to hospital. After 6 months, the immunity starts dropping a little bit over that 6 months. So you're more likely to catch infection after the 6 months, but you're still 80% unlikely to go to hospital. So the main benefit is to stop yourself or your friends or family from ending up in hospital. And the more people that end up in hospital, the less people can go to hospital. It becomes overfilled. Now, after 6 months, that immunity to Delta and such like, to catching infection, has dropped to about half, but stopping us going to hospital stays at about 85 to 90%. After the first dose, we get we'll say a rise of, we'll say 10 of antibodies against COVID. Then we get a second dose 3 weeks to maybe up to 8 weeks later or so, and that's like a trampoline effect. The immunity goes up maybe to about 5 times what the first one was. So that's why we get the second dose. It's a trampoline effect. But when we get the third booster dose, we get 20 times as many antibodies as we even got after the second dose. 20 times as many antibodies. The second dose gives us about the same number of antibodies as we would get if we caught an infection. But when we get the booster, it's 20 times more, and that seems to work reasonably well against Omicron, the current variant that's coming through. So the current variant, there are some good things about it, believe it or not. It doesn't have nearly as many people being hospitalized with it, which is really good. So it's more mild. Many people, we must remember, just get cold-like symptoms and nothing else. And many people will have no symptoms at all. But a small percentage of a very large number is a lot of people in hospital and they get clogged up again. And Omicron is unbelievably infectious, unbelievably, so far, far more infectious than Delta was. And when it comes, we almost can't stop it because it's just starting to come now. It'll go up almost straight up around New Zealand. It'll be flat for about 2 months and then it starts dropping off again. Very, very infectious.
On behalf of Africans, and also as a registered nurse myself and an infection control consultant, I'm also here to represent Africans, especially regarding the COVID-19, you know, with the Omicron going around at the moment. I'm here as part of the NZPABC, which is one of the brands that we are launching today, New Zealand Infection Prevention and Control Consultancy, which is part of what Africans are doing. And then we also have the Pan-African Broadcasting Corporation. As we all know, we don't have much of broadcasting here in New Zealand from African ethnicities.
Especially Katina being a very motivated person, and she will support us to go through the journey. I think the broadcast will help us.
To help raise the profile of Pan-African broadcasting and in so doing African overall is really, really important.
We are here to make changes, and we bring in change in this community and in this country.
You know, Rome wasn't built in one day. You start with one person, start with another, and they see you doing great things and they'll start joining in as well.